Now, before we talk about some of my favorite cards in the set, the T206 Southern League cards and the 6 different ways that you can collect this subset of players, I have a request from this T206 community. I want to know what you have picked up so far this year. As well, I want to know what you pick up in the future. So right now on my website, on T206polarbear.com, and I'll link it in the description below, it's a submission box for you to showcase your recent T206 cards. I want to separate these from the vintage community, and I want to highlight the members of this community when they pick up a T206 card. So follow that link right now and let me know what you picked up so far this year. But welcome back to my channel. My name is Chris, otherwise known on Instagram and X as @CRT_sportscards. And if you are new to T206, you have found the absolute best channel to learn about this just magnificent baseball card set. So do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. And if you're a return viewer, welcome back. But now let's dig in to some of my favorite cards in the set, the T206 Southern Leaguers. First and foremost here, how many and what are the T206 Southern League cards? In the entire 524 card set, there are 48 different cards that are designated as a T206 Southern Leaguer. These cards cover the 4 leagues in the South as well. These cards were only distributed in the southern part of the United States at the time. So they're naturally a little more scarce because of where they were released. And then number 3 here, there are only 3 different backs. Well, maybe there's 4. There actually is 4 when you take a look at a color variation of the old mill back, but we'll get to that here in a second. I will also say this is one of the backs that I love the most when it comes to T206. It is actually, as you probably know, on my right forearm right here. This is because in the Southern League set, these cards have their own back. And you know me, I'm a back guy. I will take a back of a card over a front of the card any day of the week. So for these cards, they speak to me in a way that no other card can in the T206 set. Now, let's pretend you are brand new to T206, or if you are brand new to T206, one of your first questions may be, well, 48 cards seems like not that many when you think about 524 in the entire set. How much is it going to cost me to build all of these 48 cards? I will tell you right now, when you look at what these are selling for, it's going to take you right around, in my opinion, $5,000 to complete this 48 card set. 47 of them are basically $100 cards. Now we're going to talk about the different backs and how you can find some savings on one of the backs compared to the second and third backs. The other thing is one of the cards, Shag Shaughnessy, is one of the most highly sought after cards in the entire set. This card is going to set you back $500 to $600 in a raw or 1 grade condition. I will also say, as you talk to many dealers over the next couple of years, or if you have in the past, most dealers, when they find a Southern Leaguer that is not graded, they immediately grade these cards. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to find these raw. I did, unfortunately, on a collection side, lose a recent REA raw lot of Southern Leaguers, but for the most part, when you look to purchase these cards, they're right at about $100. But maybe you don't have $5,000, and that's no shame in not having $5,000 to spend on 48 players who you more than likely have never heard of ever in your life around the baseball field. But that's okay, because there are many different ways to collect this particular 48 card subset. And what I'm going to talk about today are the 6 different ways, 3 vertical and 3 horizontal, that can maybe save you a little bit of money when it comes to not spending $5,000 Now, a couple of the avenues are going to cost you way more than $5,000, and one of the avenues is cards that I really don't even care about. These are cards that are $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and that's kind of a pet peeve of mine when it comes to some of the content of sports cards creators these days. I just don't care if a card sells for $15,000, $20,000, because that is out of my pocketbook. I can't afford cards that expensive. What I'm interested in, though, are cards that I can afford. And for the most part, all of these 48 cards are affordable from the everyday collector. Doesn't mean you have to go spend $5,000 in the next 6 months. If you set out to pick up one card a month for the next basically 48 months, you'll have this set complete. Time is in our favor with these cards because they're readily available. But which ways can you collect this set differently? The first way here is to understand that, yes, we do call it the Southern Leaguers, but there are actually 3 different leagues covered in these 48 cards. First, you have the Virginia and South Atlantic League. Second, you have the Southern Association. And then third, you have the Texas League featured in these cards. Now, which of the 3 are the easiest and simplest to put together? That would be the Texas League. The Texas League has just 6 cards of the 48. So if you're from Texas and you want a nice sampling of cards, this is the perfect subset to go after. So which players are from the Texas League? Now, the best thing with these Southern League, Texas League players is my favorite player is included in this small group of 6 players. That would be Dolly Stark. He is, of course, on my forearm as well with my old mill design. But first we have Jack Bastian, Molly Miller, Carlos Smith, there is Dolly Stark, Tony Thiebaud, and then Foley White. There is, though, an interesting part about these 6 Southern Leaguers. So when we talk about collecting the set horizontally and vertically, when I think of collecting them horizontally, I think of collecting them in each individual set. So in the Texas League, there are 6 players. The other 2 leagues, there's 20 and 22 respectively. But that's, to me, a way to collect it horizontally. Now, vertically, you're going to go by the back of the card as an old school checklist. So as a spoiler for the future part of the video, these 6 players do not have a Hindu back. Now, the second league here that is featured is the Southern Association with 20 different players. Let's take a look at those players. Now, featured in this group of 20 cards are a couple of unique players. Number 1, third card from the top, Ted Brettenstein. Ted, in his very first major league start, threw a no-hitter. Quite incredible if you ask me. Another player here that threw historians off for a long time was Harry Lentz for Little Rock. You'll notice, though, his actual name, or you should know his actual name, is Harry Seitz, S-E-N-T-Z, not L-E-N-T-Z. So that's an uncorrected error in the T206 set. You will also notice several teams that are covered multiple times: Nashville, Memphis, New Orleans, Little Rock, Birmingham. But this is a really cool 20-card assortment for the Southern Association. And then the granddaddy of them all is the 22-card Virginia and South Atlantic League. And when you think about these cards back in the 1910s, nothing says tobacco like Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, that true southern part of America. And this subset also includes Mr. Shag Shaughnessy. So let's take a look at these 22 cards. And there is Mr. Shag Shaughnessy, bottom row, third from the right. You also have, in my opinion, some really cool names in this set. Cad Coles, Tom Gaheen, Buck Hooker. But then my favorite one is Dutch Revell. Now, we'll come back to Charlie Seitz here in a second, but Dutch Revell, just a time period name. Just seems like a badass, in my opinion, to have a name like Dutch Revell. But you will also see there in that list, or on that grouping of cards, Charlie Seitz. Charlie Seitz was the longest living T206 player in the entire set. And that is because he lived to August 19th, 1980. It's wild to think about any of these players living to 1980. He passed away just 4 days past his 96th birthday. So if you wanted a extra cool one-card collection from T206, go get Charlie Seitz. He lived to the 80s. So that is the way you can collect these cards horizontally, just with the individual leagues, 6, 20, or 22. Now, how can they be collected vertically 1 through 48? This is where the back discussion comes in. So number 1, the most boring back of all of these cards is going to be the Piedmont 350. So every single one of these cards does have a Piedmont 350 back. And then one key thing to remember, because of an earlier point I made, when it comes to dealers grading these cards more often than your average common player in the T206 set, the numbers are going to look a little more inflated versus their counterparts. But this again is one of those Piedmont fatigue cards. These cards are not as common as other Piedmont cards, but because of the back, because it says Piedmont, they are naturally kind of tossed aside or not seen with as much desire as, say, their old mill counterparts. And this is the way that I am building this 48 card subset in my 520 card T206 set. I am building it with the very distinct Old Mill Southern League back. So this back, Old Mill Cigarettes, baseball series selection from Texas, South Atlantic, Virginia, and Southern Leagues is only found on these 48 cards. And the best part is, all 48 here again have this Old Mill back. This will be a step up from your Piedmont cards. So when you look at maybe having a budget of $5,000, maybe to be safe, you're looking more around $6,000 to acquire all 48 with an Old Mill back. But if you just want a challenge and you don't want to worry about a budget, you can also collect these cards in the third back, but the problem is you cannot purchase all 48. 34 of these 48 cards can be found with a Hindu back. And as noted previously, the Texas League cards, all 6 of them, do not have a Hindu. And then 4 players each in both the other 2 leagues as well do not have a Hindu back. Those players, when it comes to which do not have a Hindu back, we have in the Southern League, we have both Hearts, we have Lentz, aka Seitz, and then Rockenfeld. And then the players in the Virginia and South Atlantic League that do not have a Hindu back are King, Orth, Seitz, and Westlake. So 34 of the 48 do have that Hindu back. So it's more difficult, it's more expensive, but if you're a set completionist, you can't get all 48 in a Hindu back. But now, if you want super hard mode, you're gonna have to pick up these cards this way. That would be in an Old Mill brown back. Now, when you saw the image a little while ago, that was an Old Mill black back. There are, though, 14 cards out there of the 48 that have an Old Mill brown back. And those players would be Bernhard, Foster, Grimminger, Helm, Hooker, Jordan, Kiernan, Mulaney, Page, Reagan, Dutch Ravel, Sid Smith, Thornton, and Juan Violet. Now, some of you may say, well, that's just a faded black to a brown over the past 115 years, and you wouldn't be wrong with that thought process. But I am being told, and I have not seen this in a comparison side by side with my own 2 eyes, only online, is I am being told when you see an Old Mill black and an Old Mill brown, it is clear as day they are 2 different backs. But the kicker here is with these 14 players that have an Old Mill brown back, these cards are $10,000 plus. And so for me, They're cool, they're neat, but I have zero interest in any card right now that costs more than $10,000 because it's not going to be anywhere near my want list. What is, though, on my want list is all 48 cards in an Old Mill black back because they are attainable. And so if you want to find a really nice small group of cards for your collection, there's nothing better than the T206 Southern League set with an Old Mill back.